This is Canadian Cult Cinema. I usually talk about some sort of genre film on the show, like horror, sci-fi, or action, but this film's a little different. The movie I'm going to be talking about is a drama with a little bit of intrigue and dark comedy thrown in for good measure. We're going to be taking a look at 1992's Secret Nation. Now, a little bit of context before we get started. Secret Nation is set in Newfoundland. For those of you watching from outside of Canada, Newfoundland is an island off the east coast of Canada. It's also where I was born. Now, Newfoundland was not always part of Canada. In fact, Newfoundland and Labrador didn't join Confederation until 1949. Now, stay with me here. I'm not trying to give a history lesson, but the importance of this film needs a little bit more context. Now, there was a vote to determine whether or not Newfoundland would join Canada. That vote was 52% to 48% in favor of joining Canada. And, well, Newfoundland has been a prosperous and happy province ever since. Well, actually, people are still arguing about whether or not it was a good idea. For many years, Newfoundlanders felt disconnected and estranged from Canada. Newfoundland at one point was its own country, and then now it just seemed to be a forgotten corner of a much larger country. In the early 90s, that disillusionment grew to an anger, and that anger was palpable among the young people. Or at least that's how I saw it, being a young kid going to local punk and metal shows at the time. So that is the Newfoundland that this movie takes place in. You still with me? Okay, let's take a look at Secret Nation. The film opens with real historical footage of Joseph R. Smallwood signing papers for Newfoundland to become a province of Canada. We then get a little bit of a history lesson. Basically, Newfoundland was a British colony, then it had responsible government, and then the Great Depression hit and everything went to hell, and then there was a World War. And finally, Newfoundland votes on its future. Now, in modern day, we see an old man has passed away. The paper reveals that this is Leo Cryptus. We then cut to McGill University in Montreal, where we're introduced to our main protagonist, Frida Vokey. She's played by Cathy Jones. She's laying out the premise of her thesis, and basically for the film.
So nobody in Newfoundland was naive enough to think that they would just be embraced by Canadian society. The view that the country was being sold to Canada at a discount by the British was pretty widely held.
But Newfoundlanders went for it.
No, I don't think they did.
I don't understand.
Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't.
What does that mean?
Well, that's what my thesis is about.
Is this some sort of, Newfie joke?
Frida then heads to Newfoundland to try to prove her theory. We are introduced to her family, her brother Chris, played by Rick Mercer, her mother Ona, played by Mary Walsh, and her father, the curmudgeonly newspaper editor, Lester Vokey. We basically have the cast of This Hour Has 22 Minutes here a year before the show aired. Now, Lester was a part of a delegation that went to England to debate Newfoundland's future in the 1940s.
The delegation's in London. Look at your father. Look at that sweet face on him. You wouldn't recognize him.
It's nice, eh?
A goddamn waste of time.
Frida finds a letter that a mysterious old lady slipped into her pocket, and it just says, along with some old Newfoundland stamps. We're then introduced to some shady British men, and by shady I mean men in suits with ominous music playing. Frida is researching her thesis at the provincial archives when she runs into Michael Cryptus, son of the man who died at the beginning of the film. Michael is dropping off some of his father's documents. You see, the elder Cryptus was the chief returning officer for the 1948 Confederation referendum, and Frida would really like to get a look at those documents. This next scene is probably the funniest in the film. Frida's brother Chris, here played by a young Rick Mercer, is a failed performance artist and is now working as a taxi dispatcher/therapist.
2117 Grave Street.
Shag it. Let someone else take it. I'm going home out of it.
1217 Grave Street. What's wrong, 21?
Nothing.
That's a crock.
Who asked you, 16?
21, I believe everyone has noticed something, and I think they're kind of worried. Crown. Ship in. Do you want to talk about it, 21?
Oh, you want to know, do you? Well, everyone knows anyway. 32's been sleeping with Judy.
32 here. That's lies.
Frida wants to see Joey Smallwood, the last founding father of Confederation. But first she must get through his lawyer, Cecil Perkins.
It's not another one of these conspiracy theories, is it? Another unsubstantiated claim that the Confederation referendum was rigged?
the meeting doesn't lead to any real answers.
Since, in fact, you could have been seen as working against independence and self-determination for Newfoundland?
No. Due to the unique Canadian federal structure, provincial autonomy over key issues can be perceived as an acceptably transformed retention of national status. We retained a national character while realizing enormous benefits, material and immediate, from Confederation.
He said that?
Essentially.
Frida discovers that there may have been a spy working for the British government.
Dad, have you ever heard talk of a British informant?
What?
You know, a spy in the independence camp here during the referendum campaign?
Anything's possible, I suppose. They were strange times. It was a difficult issue.
Frida goes to a free Newfoundland benefit show at the LSPU Hall. On a personal note, I played my first ever live gig ever at the LSPU Hall when I was only 15 years old. The interesting thing about this scene is the band that's playing. They are introduced as the Conquerors, but it's actually Thomas Trio and the Red Albino, a Newfoundland funk rock band that was really popular in the 80s and early 90s. They played their most popular song, 1942 Through.
Trying to make it through to you tonight.
But it's the second song that they played that I found really interesting.
We live with a natural alienation caused by our geographic location. On the edge of the oversized nation, outsiders dictate the whole situation.
It's a lot angrier than most of the Thomas Trio music, but it sounded oddly familiar. Now, according to the credits, the song is called Alien Nation, and the music was written by Thomas Trio and the Red Albino, but the lyrics were credited to John Whalen. Now, John Whalen was the singer of a Newfoundland punk rock band called Bung. They have a song called Nation on their 1994 album Hole with similar lyrics. This scene sent me down a rabbit hole looking for a copy of the song from this movie, but I was unable to find one. So if anyone out there listening knows where to get one, please let me know. I'd love to hear that song again.
Dominions of Dominions don't give a fuck about our business. On the table, you are able to make your voices heard. Sit and stop on the common ground. You are the voices that become the word.
Now, while all this is going on, Frida finds out that Leo Cryptus's papers are being sent to England tomorrow. So she leaves the party and breaks into the archives to read said papers. She is almost captured, but she escapes with some documents. And that's where things get a little strange. Frida is helped by the ghost of an old woman. The old woman has been popping up throughout the movie, and she's the one that slipped that letter into Frida's pocket at the beginning of the film. Now, it wasn't until my second viewing that I realized the old woman was the ghost of Miss Goodyear, the secretary of Peter Cashin. Cashin was the leader of the Responsible Government League, which was the group opposed to Confederation in Canada. At least, I think that's who the ghost is. I'm still not totally sure, but the camera lingers on a news article about Miss Goodyear, so maybe, I guess? Frida returns home to confront her father about what she has learned from Cryptus's papers.
We made a mistake, you know. We were desperate and we sold the country. Jesus, if you could see the state of the people. The poverty and the tuberculosis and the... Jesus, it was desperate. Drunken dreamers, that's all we were. That's all we are.
He was paid by the British, but he never did cash the checks.
All those years listening to you go on, railing on and on about Confederation. But you did it. You did it for money. You sold out your friends. You sold out your country.
No!
Why didn't you tell me? Why did you make me do this?
Because you try so hard not to care, to have an academic interest. Do you have an academic interest in me? In my broken heart? Do you have a way to figure in all the thousands of broken hearts in that perfect little equation you're developing? Did you expect a happy ending? Do you expect me to make it end better? Besides, I never cashed the fucking checks.
The papers that Frida stole did confirm that the vote for Confederation was rigged. The film ends with the British officials burning documents. Secret Nation is a good movie. It may run a little long, but it's an interesting look at Newfoundland's history. For me, I really enjoyed the glimpses of St. John's in the early 90s. I have a connection to the film because, well, I grew up in Newfoundland, but there's another group of Canadians that also connected with Secret Nation. When the film was released in 1992, there was another referendum looming. In 1995, the Quebec independence referendum was held. The final result of that vote was 50.58% to 49.42% in favor of staying in Canada. Even closer than the Newfoundland referendum in 1948, and there was definitely conspiracy theories surrounding that vote as well. I can't confirm this, but I did read that Secret Nation played on TV in Quebec the night before the vote. I commend that program director that made that decision. I'm not sure if it would influence the vote in either direction, but it would definitely make you think long and hard before you mark that X. Secret Nation was directed by Michael Jones, who is the brother of the film's star, Cathy Jones. Cathy's probably best known for her role in the news satire This Hour Has 22 Minutes, but I most fondly remember her from Codco, a sketch comedy show that aired on CBC between 1986 and 1989. The show seems to be widely forgotten now, although there are plenty of episodes you can check out on YouTube, just no DVD release. A lot of the things that kids in the hall are praised for, well, Codco just did it first, except with Newfie accents.
What's that one of dolls now crushing your head? What's that one crushing your head? He's always crushing somebody's head.
No, that's not us. That's you're talking about kids in the hall.
Yeah,
right?
The new kids on the hall. Yeah, they're really good, aren't they? That one, Mark McKenzie, he's really funny. My daughter loves him, got a crush on him. What's that character you do, though?
Barbara Fromm?
No, I don't like her.
No. Mr. Budgel?
No, I don't like him. No.
Well, I don't know what scene you're talking
Neither
about.
do I, but if it comes to me now, I tell you.
Cathy's Codco co-star Mary Walsh played her mother Ona Vogie. Mary has appeared in many movies and TV shows and is probably the most well-known actor in the cast. I was actually almost cast as an extra in her 1998 film Extraordinary Visitor. I was going to be an audience member of a talk show, but they rejected me because they didn't like the look of my sneakers. Rick Mercer played Chris Vogie, and is probably the funniest part of the film. I actually expected Secret Nation to be a lot more comedic, considering the amount of very funny people in the movie, but for the most part the film is played straight. There are some great funny bits though, like Mercer's cab dispatcher part. Mercer would go on to be part of This Hour Has 22 Minutes and then host his own show, The Rick Mercer Report. Besides Thomas Trio and the Red Albino, another Newfoundland musician makes an appearance. Ron Hynes plays Dan Maddox, another Newfoundland historian that Frida has sex with so she can sneak a look at his research. Ron Hynes was a very well-known Newfoundland singer-songwriter, probably best known for his song Sonny's Dream. He won the Best Original Song Genie for the song The Final Breath from Secret Nation. Now, the Genies are sort of like Canada's Oscars. Sadly, he passed away in 2015. Secret Nation is an interesting look about how Newfoundland became part of Canada, and how that decision has ripple effects that are still felt to this day. For a long time, Newfoundland felt like a different country. It was disconnected by Canada not only by an ocean, but culturally as well. July 1st is supposed to be a day where we celebrate everything Canadian, but July 1st is Memorial Day in Newfoundland, and it has been observed since July 1917. It's to recall the loss of approximately 700 soldiers of the 1st Newfoundland Regiment from the Dominion of Newfoundland at Beaumont Hamel during the First World War. So, it's hard to party and wave the maple leaf when you're supposed to be remembering your war dead. But on July 1st in St. John's, you can stop by the War Memorial and pay your respects, and then wander over to George Street to enjoy a pint and celebrate with the rest of the country. It's an emotional dichotomy, but that pretty much sums up Newfoundland. Secret Nation was released in 1992, and it's pretty hard to find a copy of, but it is streaming on YouTube. I'd like to thank you for indulging me as I talked about the place where I spent my formative years. I promise you, the next time we talk, it'll be about a crazy Canadian horror film. And if you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you feel so inclined, tell a friend about the channel and share it on social media. I'd really appreciate it.